Well, hey there, freaks. It's your boy Marty here on a Friday afternoon. Sorry for dropping this episode late today. Had a long morning. Watched an hour-long demo of the Unchained Capital's Caravan product. Dope. Go check that out if you haven't already. Going to be a game changer for the multi-sig game. Then I had a dentist appointment. I had to run to a lunch. Now I'm just getting back to my apartment. And finally I have time to record these ads and get this episode up. I really like this episode. I had an incredible time earlier this week sitting down with Will Reeves from the Fold team, the founder of Fold. We had a good time drinking some very, very good mezcal that Will was kind enough to provide for the recording. We waxed poetic for about 2 hours about Fold, how the app came to be, what it's like building a distributed team, what it's like building on a protocol like Lightning, which isn't fully fleshed out yet, and how you sort of bridge the gap between new users who aren't as technical and the cypherpunks that we hope everybody can be eventually when they are leveraging technology like Bitcoin. I think you guys are really going to like this episode. Will's a great dude. Wound up rapping about wine country by the end of the episode. Got pretty cosmic. So I think you guys are going to enjoy this. Episode of Tales from the Crypt is brought to you by Cash App. As you know, Cash App is the simplest way to send and save money. And now it's the simplest way to try to grow your money. Introducing Cash App Investing. Unlike investing tools that only let you buy entire shares of stock, Cash App lets you instantly invest as little or as much as you want. We're stacking slivers of shares now, freaks. This way, when your favorite company's stock is just a little too expensive, just a little out of your reach, you can still own a piece with as little as $1. You can stack a sliver, $1's worth of a sliver of a stock. There we go. And because Cash App is directly connected to your bank account, there are no 4 to 5 day waiting periods for inbound transfers, so you can start investing today. Brokerage services are provided by Cash App Investing, a subsidiary of Square and members SIPC. And as always, they still have the incredible Boost program, which I use every day. I use it at my local coffee shop this morning. Saved myself $1. I usually use that $1 to tip the coffee people. You get a free tip in. You get some good social cue points there. And then you're really not spending that $1. You're saving it. Or are you spending it? You are spending it. But it's a $1 you would not have otherwise had if you did not have your coffee Boost on. And on top of that, of course, you're still going to be able to stack sats. Sell sats, send sats, receive sats on the app as well. And if you have not downloaded the app yet, what the hell are you waiting for? Use the code stacking sats. That's one word. And you're going to get $10 when you sign up for the Cash App. And Cash App will send $10 to our good friends at Owls Lacrosse. Owls Lacrosse. So download the Cash App from the App Store or Google Play Store today. Use the code stacking sats. Get that $10. Help our good friends out. And then go check out our good friends at Casa. Freaks, how confident are you in your key security? What keeps you up at night in your personal OPSEC with your personal OPSEC plan? Have you gotten set up with multisig yet? Does your key setup have a single point of failure? How protected are your seed phrases? Are you even asking yourself these questions? Our good friends at Casa are thinking about these questions, and they've drummed up one of the smartest and most secure ways to hodl your Bitcoin. No KYC, no altcoins, no percentage fee on your Bitcoin, no one standing between you and your keys. These guys have really worked hard to create a white glove service for multisig for you freaks. All right, so use the promo code TFTC to get up to $250 off your Casa membership. They have many different tiers, and you can find out about those tiers by emailing the Casa team directly at membership@team.casa for a free demo. Put them through their test, ask them your hardest OPSEC questions, have them walk you through the product and the different tiers, because they do have different tiers, but all memberships come with a full set of hardware wallets for your multisig plus the Casa node. Now the Casa node 2, Faraday bags and early access to all future Casa products. And if you're in that diamond and platinum membership level, you're going to get 24/7 VIP service, dedicated client advisors, and custom onboarding and OPSEC plans. So go check them out. Go to keys.casa/keymaster to check out their multisig, or email them at membership@team.casa. Use that code TFTC and get up to $250 off. Love what they're building. Love everything that's going on right now in Bitcoin. Love this conversation with Will Reeves. Learn about the Fold app, what they're doing, and a little bit about wine country. Enjoy, freaks.
from the Crypt.
What is up, freaks? Welcome back to Tales from the Crypt. I gotta take a sip because I just cheersed and didn't sip yet. It's your boy Marty Ben drinking some delicious mezcal provided by our boy Will Reeves. Will, welcome to the podcast.
How's it going, freaks? Marty, good to be here.
Thanks for coming. For you freaks that don't know, Will is the founder of Fold App, an app that just launched a couple months ago, end of September, correct?
Yeah, we've been in beta for a little bit, and end of September. But we've been around for a while.
Been around for quite a while.
Yeah, we've seen the ups and downs of Bitcoin.
Yeah. Before we get into the Fold App, you were just saying you were in Asia.
I was spent about a month and a half out in Thailand, which was an experience.
What was that like?
I had to take took my dad out for his 65th birthday, flex the remote work possibilities, worldwide Bitcoin, and had the time of my life. I used to go to Asia quite a bit growing up. My dad was a wine salesman out there, and so he would bring me when I was young, super blonde, and just take me to like dinners where the Red Army would be buying wine from them, and I was just completely in awe and had no idea what was going on. So it was good to have a return. That's
pretty badass. Yeah, we were pre-interview talking here. You're from Northern California, from wine country. I'm a big fan of wine country, and your boys with a wine club that we're part of, Scribe. Yeah, love Scribe. Shout out to Scribe. You'll have to come by next time you're out there. Give me a shout. No, I definitely do. When you said you're boys with those guys, I was like, I'm definitely going to text them the next time I'm out there. But so what was how did you hop around Thailand? Did you stay in one spot? I think I went just about everywhere you can go. I started in Bangkok, saw that absolutely wild city. Just riding around the tuk-tuks there, street food was phenomenal. Then up north, got to see some island action down south. Almost crossed paths with Dan Held when he was out there, actually, which would have been quite a thing. Quite. It's always great running into Bitcoiners in random parts of the world. They're everywhere. Were you actively seeking out Bitcoiners on your travels? No, but it's of course you're just out there. You're putting stuff out there, and then people hit you in the DM saying, "Oh, I'm in the town right next to you. Let's hang out." I actually had I don't even want to blow up this guy's OPSEC, but very large Bitcoiner, very active on Twitter. I was driving in Chiang Mai. I look out my window and he's just walking down the street with his family. I had no idea he actually lives there. And so I couldn't get away from him. It's hard to get away from us. We're a small group, but we're everywhere. How many people are in Chiang Mai? Oh, thousands. What was your favorite part of Thailand? Food? Food was amazing. People were incredible. My favorite thing I did, I went on his boat and just floated down the Mekong River for like 3 days with this, about a group of 20 people. And so you were with the same group. You had no idea who they were getting on the boat. And then at the end, you're just like playing cards with them, sharing beer laos, and the stuff that you see out there is just incredible. Yeah. Asia's a frontier I've not explored yet. Yeah. I think I've got to sack up and get over to Asia. I've heard beautiful things. I'd love to check out Thailand in particular. It's a good spot. I'll give you recommendations. I actually speaking of more Bitcoiners, Peter McCormick has an incredible itinerary that he can give out. Did you I followed as much as I could. It checks out. What's the itinerary? Is there activities, bars? It was more just the spots where to go to make sure that you're hitting. It's a big place. Yeah. So it was just making sure you can go a lot of places, and so just finding out the right spots and good itinerary. What was it like working while you're over there? Insomniac. That's what it makes you become. The time change is difficult. So you basically start at around 8 p.m. and you take the late shift right as everyone's waking up, and you probably wake up again at 6 a.m. But the good part is that you have the whole day just to mess around, explore. So that was positive. Yeah, and it's I work for a remote team too, and it's interesting. the coming from an office job to a remote team, the sort of habits you have to develop, and you have to be responsible for yourself.
Oh yeah, and the rest of the team needs to flex as well, even to just where everyone else is, right? And so I think the beauty of like a remote team is understanding that, people are going to find themselves in different situations. Life is going to take them different places, family, work stuff, and the team is less about is as equally flexible in like in the work and also in the kind of lifestyle that they let everyone else live around them.
All right, so I guess we'll start our dive into Fold from a unique angle. How do you go about picking the people to be on this distributed team?
This is one of the things where I'm constantly thinking of, because we're small. We're about 6 people, and so each person you add could considerably change the entire culture, could for better or for worse. And so far we've been super lucky that it's for whatever reason, and I'm starting to figure out what the formula is that we've been betting on the right people. So what we've learned is, there's a lot of people who will come within kind of the Bitcoin or crypto ecosystem that are, looking for work, looking for gigs, but, and you want someone passionate about just what we're doing. It's not an easy place to work. And so you need to believe in something and find your place in it. And so that's important. But even more that is just being excellent at what you do. And outside of that, bringing a fresh perspective is what I look for. But I'd say the key thing for us is that every single person on the team was a direct referral or had worked with someone else on the team. So everybody had spent time, a year, 2 years already working with, one of the other teammates and brought them on. It was like vouched for them, already had a good way of working with them that has just makes them able to just get on the team, hit the ground running, and just like mesh with the culture. Like, after Crypto Springs, we did our first offsite in Palm Springs. We got the whole team down there, and it's one thing to see each other on Hangouts or Zoom every day and work there, but when you get everyone in the room, it's like, all right, how are we all going to act? We like each other, and this was one of just the most fun times I've had, just hanging out with good people. And so when you are also doing good work, you're doing something right.
Yeah, common theme on this podcast is pumping the amount of good people that you meet along the way in this Bitcoin journey. So what the hell are you guys building? Fold app, I've been using it a bit actually to buy Amazon vouchers, to shop on Amazon using Bitcoin via the Lightning Network. I think I've been buying $50 voucher. I think I bought $100. No, 50. I bought a $50 two $50 vouchers via Lightning. Transaction went, I did it from my Zap wallet and did it pretty seamlessly within the app, and just have loaded up my Amazon account. That's been my experience up to this point. So what are we building at Fold? Why are you building it? How did you get to this point?
Yeah. In short, we're trying to build a Trojan horse for hyper Bitcoinization. How do we get Bitcoin to the most amount of people in the shortest amount of time while educating them about what it is? Because ultimately Fold is trying to bring Bitcoin and make it accessible and rewarding to everybody. And so that means reaching far beyond those that even currently have it. And so, right now as it stands, Fold allows you to earn Bitcoin while shopping at, the retailers and businesses that you visit every day, whether that's through a credit card, or you can even earn even more cash back if you use Lightning and Bitcoin. So the idea is that we lower the barrier to entry to gaining exposure to Bitcoin, make it as simple as possible, but don't stop there. The idea is that we're going to continue bringing these users, these noobs down the rabbit hole, introducing them more and more to what Bitcoin, the asset, can do along the way. And so my favorite use case and my favorite user journey is, the person that has been curious about Bitcoin. They sync their credit card or debit card and start to earn it. They see the number start to go up a little bit, and then they look and see, okay, I understand a little bit what Bitcoin is, and I've been taught about like what a wallet is. Now I've been introduced to some good wallets, and on Fold I can get 3-4% more back if I start spending Bitcoin. And so what you see people do is start to transfer, and this is true of 20% of our users that come in with credit card, and they transfer over to spending with Lightning in a period of about 30 to 40 days. And so, the idea is that we're educating about Bitcoin as a store of value, as an asset of savings that they can start to accumulate. But at the end is start to show all the various different ways Bitcoin can be used.
Why do you think your users are deciding to use Lightning predominantly?
Well, partly is because we only allow them in the app to use Lightning. Fold originally was on-chain payments into Starbucks. And you can imagine what that experience is like, holding up the line for 10 minutes. You may pay a hefty fee for a $5 cup of coffee. You may pay, $1, $2, and it just makes zero sense for any kind of retail payment capacity. And so we knew that Lightning was going to be the only place that would make Bitcoin a ability to make it as a store or as a medium of exchange at all. And so we knew that this would be the great experiment, was going to be with Lightning. And so pretty much with this launch of the app is that we just cut right to the chase and are allowing users to directly experience layer 2 as seamlessly and easy as possible. So we work directly with a lot of the great wallets to make sure that onboarding is great, so that users' first experience there is as rewarding as they could have expected from their credit card, if not even more. And we try to incentivize it more by giving pretty much unprecedented cashback rewards to them in Bitcoin.
What's it like pitching this to the merchants on the other side?
This is, there's the story of merchant adoption in Bitcoin has been long and fraught, and the original days of going to merchants and saying, this is a whole new asset that you need to accept. There's all these people that wanting to spend it. That just never came to fruition. That led to a lot of false starts, really. And so you had, I think there was, Expedia, or Priceline and Steam, all these, big retailers, said, okay, let's check it out. And the demand wasn't there. And part of the reason is that the experience of spending Bitcoin on chain is absolutely terrible. There's no incentives at all for anyone to do that. And so now when we look at this is that we've changed the conversation. It's number one, saying to these merchants, we know, that you're looking for new customers. That is a need that you have right now. And there are a lot of people out there, especially young people, you're trying to get their dollars, who would rather receive their rewards and loyalty points in Bitcoin as opposed to, your debased internal loyalty system or your airline miles that constantly get changed. And so, for consumers, it says, Bitcoin's pretty clearly a better reward. Maybe not money in their eyes yet, but it's very, very clearly a better reward than anything else on the market. And so we can approach these merchants and say, this is a big opportunity for you to stand out from the crowd. And so that's initially where the conversations start, is just how do we get more customers to you? But the idea is to do the same thing we do to users, is to educate them more and more, bring them further and further down the rabbit hole of the other benefits Bitcoin can bring. And so very quickly the conversation changes to, okay, what else can add to you as a merchant, your payment processor? And what they see is that when users spend via Lightning or Bitcoin with us, there are 0 chargebacks and there are 0 processing fees. And for merchants, that's a multi-billion-dollar problem that they face every year. And on average, their transaction fee is 2 to 5%, and it's increasing more and more as credit cards are trying to give more and more rewards to lure new users. They're putting that more on the merchants to pay more fees, and so it's kind of a way that it's hitting them right at this interesting point where fraud is increasing with credit and debit cards, processing fees are too, and so they start to at least think about this. We're definitely not in a place right now where they're going to start adopting it at all. This is, for the most part, they're still like, okay, what is Bitcoin? Why are there no chargebacks? What does finality and instant settlement mean? And so, we just see it as really a starting point with rewards that we can open up further and further education.
And no, it's beautiful. And I think I completely agree with your thought that Lightning is going to enable like more people transacting on Bitcoin. Myself have sent more Bitcoin transactions this year than any other year up to this point, and 95% of them have been Lightning transactions, and that's actually something we've noticed on our site, which is actually pretty interesting. I'm interested to see if you're seeing this and Fold users as well. For TFTC, our BTC Pay server, something like 86% of all the transactions that we have received are via the Lightning Network, but they only make up like 9% of the total value we received. So
yeah.
And I think that's because of the dime bag, and people are just like sending 10 cent little things.
But Lightning Network has been historically, if you talked about a year ago, average payment on Lightning Network is going to be, couple hundred, couple thousand sats maximum. And this was kind of the idea, Fold is actually also behind Lightning Pizza. And that was kind of part of the experiment was all right, let's now bring Lightning, to the next level in terms of transaction size and make it something happen in the real world. We've proven that microtransactions work really well, YALs, all of that's, really exciting stuff. Now, what happens when we start sending, $25 transactions through Lightning? And that at the point was really rare to have happen.
Yeah, I believe I bought some Domino's via the OM Pizza.
You were not alone.
Yeah.
This was just Lightning Pizza was a success beyond our wildest imagination. The Fold team created it equally as just a project for us to learn about Lightning, as much as like, okay, let's see if people will actually even use Lightning for this. Like, it was totally not something that was guaranteed to happen. And
so let's dive into a couple things here. Back to like the chargebacks, but then on top of that, privacy as well. Like, so you were describing before we hit record how one of your biggest headaches right now is credit card fraud and basically the ills of collecting credit card data from other companies that have leaked that data onto the dark web.
Yeah, it's anyone who accepts fiat or credit and debit cards faces this massive problem. Retailers, everybody. It's going through a checkout line at a given retailer is essentially entering a battle zone. Like, you swipe your card, you're giving your data to your bank, you're giving your data to the retailer, you're giving it to the corresponding retailer's bank, you're doing it through anyone who co-branded that credit card. So if it's an Amazon card, you're also giving it to Amazon. You're giving it to your loyalty or a reward point app that you have. You're giving it to any kind of financial planning apps like Mint, and not to mention your credit card networks. And all of them have permissions to do almost anything with your data. And now they make it about as hard as possible to not let you know that you actually have some control over this, and you can opt out to a lot of this madness. But for the most part, it's free game every time you swipe your card. And it's giving not only your location, but your personal details, your private keys of your credit card, your transaction details, what you're buying, which ultimately just creates multiple honeypots for both attackers and advertisers alike, which creates this idea that now credit card and personal transaction data is rife on the dark web and freely available to, honestly, whoever wants it. And so it is a problem for anybody who accepts credit cards. It's pretty crazy.
Now, we were talking about the Vice documentary that we also mentioned in the episode with Wiz, but it's crazy how accessible it is. And this documentary in particular was in Atlanta, underground gang network, basically using Bitcoin to buy this information on the dark web and then creating credit cards and basically committing credit card fraud. And all these merchants got fucked via chargebacks.
Yeah. And this is why, when we talk about, spending Bitcoin, Fold can actually, and we've done this before. So one thing we notice is that because we work with prepaid programs, that's how Fold works, right? You send us a credit card transaction or a Lightning or Bitcoin transaction, and we convert that into a prepaid equivalent at the merchant. And every year after all of the prepaid conventions that happen or nationally, we get inbound from all the retailers saying, hey, let's tell me what you're up to. Like, our friends over at X retailer told us that, they saw you guys you're working with them. Like, can you tell us about it? And, this is all opportunities to explain to them some of the benefits that come with this different type of way of transacting with Bitcoin. And that, number one, that it doesn't have to be a painful onboarding experience for anybody, but the benefits that you could potentially get are pretty crazy. And so for them, they understand the benefit that it's a constant cat and mouse game to stop fraud and to protect your customers. And that is only getting increasingly hard. And when you're a retailer and your game is logistics or making sure the shelves have inventory on them, you're not the best at protecting your customers' data, And even so, you think maybe a big tech company like Google is. In fact, no, Google is one of the largest purchasers of this credit card user data at these retailers. The only difference is they're buying it instead of hacking it.
Yeah, it just came out that they're partnering with Citigroup to basically create Google Wallets or whatever.
Oh yeah, I mean, and you can see why they're trying to finally create the full loop between online advertising and actually in-store spend, and that is the holy grail for them. And this is a very, very clear way to get to it.
What's so bad about it, though? We should be getting served ads that of stuff we probably are likely going to buy. Is it that bad?
It's a good point, and that's something that we get all the time. Okay, why should I care about privacy? And so at Fold, the perspective we take, because we get that so much, is that we're just going to incentivize you to be more private. We're going to give you more cash to stay private. But really, the reason is you have stories like. There was a guy, I think in DC, he was shopping at a supermarket and there was some kind of spill and he slipped on it, fell and broke his back. And he sued the supermarket. And the supermarket goes into his loyalty points and looks at all of his transactions to find a history of buying alcohol. And they use that in the court case against him to say that, hey, you were probably drunk.
Pause. But also terrible. That's some cold-hearted shit.
There was a firefighter was accused of arson because he looking at his credit card details, they saw that he bought a fire starter at a hardware store, and that was used as evidence that he was an arsonist. And all of these people came out to be totally exonerated, and it wasn't like this guy wasn't actually an arsonist. But it just goes to show that there are ways that data can be used that you just never could expect. And luckily, right now we theoretically live in a place that is the most benign to lazy data practices and lack of privacy. And we can very quickly see in other places around the world where this can be weaponized against people very, very quickly. And if the infrastructure is there, it will be used. So it's about creating, new infrastructure that protects people. And this is why, for us, it's important. It's not just about bringing Bitcoin, little b currency to payments and rewards. It's about bringing Bitcoin, big B, the ethos of Bitcoin to it, privacy, sovereignty to the products themselves, as opposed to just slapping Bitcoin on something that's already out there.
And so how does Fold allow a user to transact more privately than they otherwise would if they use Bitcoin as opposed to a credit card? Because I can see you guys sort of being a bridge, and you're in this form now, but over time you're like a Pokemon that evolves and sheds some features and slowly transitions to Bitcoin only. Is that, I don't want to assume or ask a leading question, but is that on your mind?
I mean, that's we consider where we are as the product itself today is supposed to meet the user at where they are today. And they don't even need to know about Bitcoin, and we're going to create something that entices them to come in. So we have to start at a really elementary level. And the idea is that we take them on this journey as the product evolves to become more private, to become more conscious about what happens with their data, to avoid the common kind of pitfalls that we currently see, and not just by beating it over the head that they need to do it, but just incentivizing them. And so, right now, Fold works with prepaid cards, and prepaid cards have a long history of being something is used to protect anonymity, for better or for worse. And we just use that in an everyday retail context to give that same privacy to everyday consumers and shoppers. And so the idea is that you can go through any of these checkout lines with Fold and avoid that entire line of people putting their hands in your data and their, with their own surveillance. And it kind of throws a wrench in the whole thing. It just doesn't give them access, doesn't allow them to connect necessarily an identity with transaction data. And so it gives a level of privacy. It's not perfect, but it's by far leaps and bounds better than what is currently available. And so our idea is to constantly evolve the product to continuously, build this case and build these features for users.
And so the merchant just, to them, it looks like they're just interacting with Fold.
To them, it looks like there's an
just
anonymous
a voucher.
credit.
Yeah.
Anonymous credit that's there and settled. And, this is, the way that, we can talk about this to merchants is, there's the long game and there's the short game. The short game is merchants are, right now experience a problem with rising processing fees that they cannot change or do anything about. You have Walmart trying to create their own parallel POS systems to try to get around Visa and MasterCard fees. You have American Express just announcing today that they are going around to retailers and paying them $500,000 to take American Express, who historically has the highest fees, 4% for a given transaction, just to take it. And the reason is American Express gets that much value back from all the transaction data that's going to happen. And so for merchants, they're looking right now for alternative ways of accepting money from their users. And so you start to see a weird pattern that the number one app in the App Store, finance app, was Starbucks. And the way the Starbucks app works is that you don't sync a credit card to that. You load gift cards into it. And essentially what they've done is divert a massive amount of their consumer spending away from a credit card into internal prepaid credit. That for them lowers fees, lowers chargebacks. Uber is doing the exact same way. And so we see this massive shift and desire for them to search for alternatives. And so Fold is really, when we talk to merchants, really presenting that narrative and that vision. Now, our long game is the idea that merchants shouldn't be holding this data to begin with. And in fact, it's more of a liability for them than anything. And so that's not something that we come out and talk about. That's not our first, point. That's not what happens when I get in the boardroom. It's not exactly what I say first, but we'll get there in a couple of years, 5, 10 years. That's because that's going to be the case. This game of cat and mouse will always be against the merchants. They will be at a disadvantage.
Is there an equal amount of stress these merchants feel from having to handle this data as the amount of joy they get from profiting off of it? Or
it's hard because it's one of those cases where if you're a small merchant, it's not that big of a deal, right? You may have hurt a couple customers, but it's and first of all, you're not a target like large retailers.
Target or something like that.
Yeah, no names. And so the idea is that in last year, 50% of retailers were hacked or compromised in some way, and that 50% translates into like hundreds of millions of people getting hacked and their data going out into freely available to advertisers, attackers, whoever. And so for them, the idea is they benefit from the tracking, the advertising abilities that they also get. But they also know that when this PR comes out, that 50% of their customers now have been compromised, it's been proven and studied that those users don't come back for another 6 months. Like there's some crazy figure that people just decide to change their habits away because they feel it's unsafe. Now, the unwritten rule is that it's going to happen to the other retailer you're switching your spending to anyway. It's a structural problem, not a problem with one retailer overall.
Yeah. Why do we keep doing it though? Like, was there? Is there just like a sunk cost fallacy in the way all this data is collected? That was created like in the 80s, 70s, or 80s. when this credit card system was being created.
I mean, what, like you look at right now that, you know, the whole thing of, you know, the data is the new oil, you know, the story of the 80s to 90s to now has been the ever expanding mining of data out of customers to then use to market to them more and make them even more customers. And it's just been about how pervasive and how deep can they get. And they're only getting better and more and more. And it's historically been a source of massive value and money. That's why we have Google, which is so powerful, because that's what they're entirely based on. And so it's a business model that's definitely proven out. But I think it's also been blinded by how fast it's come on. And there's some negative externalities to this that aren't being accounted for that I think retailers are starting to understand.
Yeah, like we could be erecting the Chinese panopticon social credit system of our future without even realizing it, right?
That's the thing. It's like, it's, you know,
Like
for them,
one day they could just flip a switch and turn it on us.
Yeah, and it's one of those. It's like when the infrastructure is there, it will be used. If it can happen, it will happen. And so, you know, politics change, larger macro things shift, and it's not unbelievable that things will be weaponized that were once maybe good. Like maybe I really did like the fact that I got more targeted ads instead of just these, you know, remember, you know, early days of the internet where you just get these like massive banners in your face that weren't relevant at all.
Yeah. One day you're getting served links to the merch store for Rage Against the Machine. The next you're getting sent to the gulag for having listened to them on Spotify.
Exactly.
Be careful, freaks. Be aware. It is, do you think, and that's a big theme around here too, is like, I think people are just too apathetic. I'm worried about my fellow man.
That's one of the things that we're one of the biggest challenges that I see that we have is people ask, okay, you care about privacy, you care about, you know, this. How do you make people care about that? Why do people don't care? People aren't going to pay for that. People don't want that. And it's like, you're right. Generally, you're right. The pain has not been felt for whatever reason. It is something that everyone says they want, but will do really very minimal things to actually get it. And so our position on this is, okay, well, we know how to make people do things, and that's pay them to do it. And so we are taking the efficiencies that, you know, technology like Bitcoin can bring to a retail environment, harvesting those savings and giving it right back to users as more cash back, more than they could ever expect from a credit card or, you know, anything else. And it just happens to come with all of these other good things.
And so how do you see your users balancing the hodl versus spend versus spend and replace and sats back ecosystem? Do you see sort of unknown externality and user, what's the word I'm looking for? Tendencies that sort of arise when they're like, all right, I can get sats back, but I have to spend Bitcoin, but I can get around this if I just at the same time like buy a little bit of it on the Cash App. Disclaimer: Cash App's a sponsor. Or something like. Do you see any weird things popping up, or people using the app in ways you did not expect?
Yeah, I mean, this has been one of the amazing things to watch. Like the product itself provides in real time, the warring narratives the seemingly warring narratives. Oh, is it a store of value? Is it a medium exchange? Because it provides opportunity for both. You can sync your credit card, spend your fiat, and start stacking sats and never spend them, hodl them. Very soon you'll be able to withdraw it to your personal wallet, and it supports that use case. It also supports the use case of spending your Bitcoin. And it's been really interesting to bring, you know, historically Fold was about spending Bitcoin. So we had hardcore users that were there for that use case. There might have been also, you know, they were also hodlers, but they were there and wanted to spend and felt that there was value in doing that. So we helped them do that. Now, when we released support for fiat, we get a bunch of these maximalists and hardcore hodlers coming back saying, now I can finally use Fold. Thank you for providing this feature so I can, you know, I don't have to spend my Bitcoin, but I can still support, you know, a Bitcoin company like yourself. I'm like, great. But the awesome thing is that those same users, will see them, and about 2 weeks later, they're like, hey, check this out. And they're using services like SparkSwap, or in the future it could be Jack Mallers' Olympus or Escher, that are instantaneous USD to Lightning invoices. And essentially, it's an instant purchase of Bitcoin and an instant sell. So there's no exposure to capital gains in this scenario. Which historically has been a huge friction for users spending Bitcoin. It is a headache to do your taxes at the end of the year. Now, we're working on making that easier. A couple partnerships with companies that help you do this accounting, but one of the biggest things has been the capital gains exposure that you could have, that could totally wipe out the value that you got in spending it. And users are now taking advantage of these services, sending us videos saying, hey, check this out. I'm spending with USD, but I'm stacking sats at the Bitcoin level on Fold, and I'm coming out in total with more Bitcoin than I started.
So they buy via a SparkSwap.
Yeah, the SparkSwap right now has been the most popular use case, and people have been using that the most, which is desktop right now. Hopefully, Trey, let's get that on mobile. But that allows for instantaneous buy of Bitcoin into a Lightning channel, spend it directly in the same invoice to Fold, so right there, instant buy, instant sell, and then you get advantage of the
It's another abstraction of privacy there, where your bank only sees that you're using SparkSwap or something like that.
Exactly, and we're going to see these. We use what we can, and some of these are daisy chaining things together to obfuscate things, and other ways it's just to get more efficiencies. And you start to look at this opportunity. It's like you have a user who has no idea about Bitcoin, but under the hood, this POS system is converting into Bitcoin so that the merchant doesn't take the processing hit and has no exposure to chargeback, but the end consumer is none the wiser. So you start to see how Bitcoin can start to be used in retail context in a mass adoption scenario without them ever knowing it's happening, and it's equally incentivized for both parties.
Feels like it's happening. Like today, did you see that video game drop of
the first-person shooter one?
Yeah.
Yes. I haven't checked that out, but I saw it.
It's crazy how fast this is all happening.
I feel it. I feel there's like some momentum picking up, and it started last year, and I don't know what it is. I don't know. I don't know if it's just a bunch of new builders coming in or the technology is mature. I have no idea, but it is happening.
Time is passing. It's inevitable. Will.
18 more months.
So what would you say to people who think you're dancing with the devil, with all these terrible merchants who have historically taken our data, mishandled it, and like interacting with that beast and still trying to maintain the cypherpunk ethos? How do you balance that out?
It's a good question. Everyone on the team at Fold struggles with this and considers it a challenge to bring to the product roadmap, to bring to, when we look at what are we going to build, this is the tension that is constantly there. There are easy ways to do what we're doing that don't have any of these other parts to Fold. And it's frankly easier to build those things. But the way that we take it is that we almost use the can't be evil scenario. Build it in a way that incentivizes both parties to use the product right now in the state that they are now, not with a bunch of education, but use it right now. But from the ground up, it's built in a way that it is fundamentally changing how payments and rewards happen. Fold is it's a weird thing because it's a payment gateway whose business model is not based on charging fees, and it's a rewards platform that's not based on selling user data, which are fundamentally and historically the business models of both of those
verticals.
Of those verticals. And so the idea is to change it from within without sacrificing the incentives for users and merchants to use it today.
Yeah. No, because it does make sense in the long run that this data does become a burden on these merchants, and chargebacks in particular are really what draws me to the quote-unquote merchant adoption meme.
Right.
That should be the number one selling point to them. You're not going to get charged back. And I think if more and more are going to... This debate's been going on for fucking half a decade now too, right?
It is. So
merchant adoption.
In circles, and it's historically, it's a funny thing because the merchant adoption question historically was largely ceded to at the hard fork and the block size wars was largely ceded as like a Bcasher goal. And it actually was. They were trying to sacrifice everything good about it to solve this weird adoption issue that they had, and sacrifice everything good that had been built for this strange use case.
Yeah.
And so now with Lightning, we finally have the ability to be like, actually, we're going to take that territory back. You clearly have not done anything good with it. And the technology is at a place where we can completely fulfill all of those goals. And so I think it's at a point where it is a positive thing to come in. It's a reason why it's coming back into the picture now. And this is not just about people accepting, getting into retailers. We know retailers. Proton Mail just came out saying that they're actually hodling all the Bitcoin.
I saw that, so boss.
You see Pornhub getting kicked off of PayPal. You saw in the past things like Ease. You saw
the CE, former founder of PayPal, get axed from Bank of America.
Yes, and the great irony after that. Yeah. And so all of these things.
First they came for the ex-founder of PayPal, and I said nothing. What? Wait, they started there?
That needs to be memed. This is in the house of memes here. That could work. And so, we're starting to see all these different ways that merchants can interact with it, whether that's, hodling it for privacy, using it for privacy means, using it for censorship resistant means, using it because they feel it's an asset that's going to appreciate, it's going to help their bottom line, or in our case, streamline and make more efficient payments. And so it's something that I think, there's a lot of people who have made their career on saying, Bitcoin is not for payments. And I think now that's starting to seem a little anachronistic. It's like we actually can do both right now. Yeah. Bitcoin is large enough to accomplish that.
Yeah. Do you ever worry you're too early though? Is that
always? This is being in this space in general is you have to always think that way. And so the reason I'm even working on this is I think primarily out of the white paper and in the after mining the first Genesis block, the use case of hodling was pretty much supported in an incredible way. Send and receive and hodl. And so that technology was almost right out of the gate, just great for a use case of store of value and the accumulation use case of Bitcoin. And I think that makes sense. The idea of it being a medium of exchange, the infrastructure for that has never, ever been there, not even close. It's only now that you start to see how it could be there. And now we may be early, but if you're not working on it now, it will never happen. You will always be early.
I bought a $4 ad on a beta video game via Lightning from somebody who was on the complete opposite side of the earth this morning.
And we're seeing that. You see some of my favorite new things you have. So if we just look at what I imagine how Bitcoin is starting to tap into these, what I see as these payment reservoirs that happen in the incumbent world. We are taking on payments and rewards. Billions of dollars are locked up in rewards. If every person who earned rewards in the U.S. last year got Bitcoin back instead of their points or airline miles, 16 million Bitcoin would have been distributed. It's no joke. This is like, we talk about instant ways to instantly get distributed everywhere. Like that's one of them. But there are a lot of others. There's Stackwork is working on essentially a mechanical Turk for using Lightning for payout in Bitcoin.
Excuse me.
And you think about, it as a global use case. It's a couple Satoshis, 100 Satoshis is one thing here, but it's good money in different parts of the world. And so you start to see how its use as a payment rail is both a way to explore a new use case, but it's also about distributing Bitcoin more widely to the rest of the world more efficiently than just locking it up in a kind of speculative use case. And so even if all of these payment use cases end up with people as hodlers at the end of the day, we're happy with that. That's fine.
Yeah, no, I think a good example of this is the UTXO consolidation we saw over the weekend. Sergey from Bit Refill, I think, pointed
Shout out
out
Sergey, yeah.
that that Binance, they seem to have consolidated the dust outputs in their Tether wallet. So apparently, Tether, every time Tether is burned or something, it creates a Bitcoin UTXO of 564 sats, which is about like 4.5 cents right now. I checked this morning, or whatever the price. It's 4.5 cents according to whatever the price was this morning. But I was thinking, like, shit, man, like, if that was on chain, like one UTXO, you're never going to send that. So that's what they did. They consolidated millions of them into bigger UTXOs. But I've received less than 500 Satoshi payments on the Lightning Network many times, like, without a problem.
It has loosened up people's relationship in a certain way. You know, there's obviously the hoarding element will always be there. You know, everyone on the Fold team is a hodler. Like, we're not spending down our Bitcoin, but a lot of us are spending our Bitcoin, or spending Bitcoin that we get specifically to fulfill that given transaction. And so what we've seen is that Lightning, first with this idea of, you know, a couple sats sending here has just loosened people's relationship to Bitcoin overall in a way that makes it flow far more freely than it ever has before. And that alone changes a lot in terms of people's relationship to it.
Yeah. Now it's crazy running like the merch store. It's sort of becoming a way too, just via accepting Lightning. More people are buying merch via Lightning. But I've come to realize, so the way we've hooked it up with our Shopify is we've had to do a workaround. Shout out DJ Seeds for putting this together via BTC Pay server, where users can buy merch using Bitcoin via BTC Pay server, but then I have to manually go mark the item as paid on the back end on Shopify.
Yeah.
But then it takes that from my business account. And like thinking about this, a lot of people are buying using Lightning, but for me as a business owner, if I just add Bitcoin, like receiving Bitcoin via Lightning as a functionality, that's actually a way to get exposure to Bitcoin. Like I'm buying Bitcoin at a discount basically because they're buying merch and I'm getting, and my business account's just getting charged like the raw cost for that. And I'm getting the profit on top of that bought in Bitcoin right away and sent right to my custody.
I mean, this is what, you know, so one of the issues that we always had, and always a legitimate criticism about, you know, Fold in the past, is that we were essentially an off-ramp, right? Selling Bitcoin to get prepaid access. And so one of the great things of introducing rewards to this is that now we are almost hodling 100% of what we bring in as Bitcoin payments, because we're paying those out as rewards to users using fiat and their Bitcoin. And so we're creating this closed loop system now where it's not being offloaded and sold in the way that we had to in the past just to keep the lights on. We're keeping it internal and rerouting it as rewards, which is also creates, you know, a whole new relationship for at least us as a business, and, you know, keeps that, you know, buy pressure right.
So how do you go about building? I've got a lot of spoonisms and word mix-ups today. How do you go about building this app while Lightning itself is being built out, like building on top of something that's not finished yet?
It's a great question. You know, a lot of times we get people asking, oh, so, you know, BTC Pay servers underneath it, right? And it's not. Fold is built out 100% everything under the hood. And it's not because we don't want to use BTC Pay server. We love BTC Pay server. We think it's one of the most exciting projects in the space. It's because we need to be on the ground looking at how Lightning is developing as a technology, and we need to see that forward. We're basing a lot of our business on the growth of Lightning happening, and if we don't have that on the ground look at how it's progressing, the challenges that are facing it, the limitations, the, you know, some key benefits that can be, you know, got from it, like, we lose out on a huge opportunity and puts us at a disadvantage. And so we build out everything. We're managing our own nodes. We're, you know, doing things right, then we're doing things wrong. Then we learn how to fix it. And constantly, the greatest part about the Lightning community right now is that it is so geared towards improving this and sharing information that, you know, people that would, you know, consider we'd be competitors to. We're freely sharing information about, how to improve our stack, how to improve our Lightning. Like 10% of every Fold's employees' time is to contributing open source to Lightning, whether that is, tooling to manage your node better, educational materials, things like this that is all in spirit of, we're doing this as a community. And so it is definitely not without its challenges, and we see those firsthand, and that's kind of the point of why we build out everything.
So how has the network changed as you've been building on it? Has it gotten better, worse? Things that you want, things that you need, things that you wish weren't there?
So I would say there was a huge controversy that happened when we launched Lightning Pizza, because there's a stat that we said saying like, 50% of transactions didn't go through or something like that. And that was there were certain other communities who loved that stat and jumped on it as a reason why Lightning could never work. And actually it was kind of our fault because we didn't actually position that stat right. It was also the fact of onboarding into Lightning wallets was also the issue. And so for us, we have seen huge leaps of improvement in user experience of wallets themselves. So onboarding is getting better and better. You're starting to see, at that time, the only viable wallet to get someone casually onto Lightning to try Lightning Pizza was Blue Wallet at the time. That was something you could spin up really quickly, get it done. It's custodial. There's all these other criticisms of it, but it was definitely the easiest way to get started.
It works.
It works.
Not gonna lie, I used Blue Wallet this morning.
We had so many people. We were doing we'd have people come out saying, people who've been in Bitcoin for a long time, always non-custodial. They would say, okay, like actually, how do I get Lightning Pizza? We're like, okay, well, here are your options in wallets. And they'd always come back and say, you know what? I used Blue Wallet and I really liked it. And they wouldn't admit that in public. And there's a reason, because,
I did a demo. Matt yelled at me because I did a demo on my phone just to show how the dime bag worked. Because I was pushing Lightning Network microtransactions and I used Blue Wallet. I got some shit from people. I was like, fuck it works. I only have $10 on there. Get off my back.
Yeah, I think there's a custodial solutions provided.
Let me be clear. I use other non-custodial wallets as well. And many wallets. I jump from wallet to wallet. I just happened to hit the Blue Wallet that time.
That's a good caveat, Marty. Save your DMs. There's an immediate bringing a custodial wallet to market is much easier to do in a user-friendly way, much faster to do. Non-custodial has a longer time horizon, and it's catching up already, and we're already seeing it there. And so, if you ask, like, what do we need from the Lightning Network? What do we want? And one of them was just wallets to improve their UX. And I would say right now, I'm kind of changing from improving the UX, because I think there's a lot of really good solutions that need 6 months, a year, and then they'll be really good. But the thing that we're seeing now is channel management and liquidity is the big problem. We frequently have users from many different of the wallets that we all know saying, I can't route a payment to Folds because we've exhausted all of the payments to our side of the channel. The people from those wallets have just spent it all our way because we're one way right now. And the wallets are still learning on how to spin up new channels with more capacity, with more for the ability to route higher payments. Like $25 through Fold, nearly 100% of the time. $200, $400 payments through Fold takes, sometimes we can run into issues there. But that has, that's coming from a time where we were excited about a $25 payment in February with Lightning Pizza, and now we're regularly transacting $200, $250 every day.
Yeah, it's 8x improvement there.
Oh yeah, of course. And it's, and part of that is that there's a ceiling. Like Lightning developers are purposely keeping that limit low for good reason right now. We don't need to be too reckless. So I think most of the things and most of the criticisms that I see are, it's one of those things that it's just like, yes, I see it, you're right, but just wait a little bit and it will be there.
Yeah, I mean, like Bitcoin and Lightning, both of them. More Bitcoin, Bitcoin in the eyes of the mainstream, and then Lightning Network in the eyes of the people closer in Bitcoin and in the space. this shit is not going to happen like out of the box overnight. Like Rome wasn't built in a day. That's like hilarious that people are like, oh, this thing sucks. It's like, it's fucking
and
almost 2 years old.
And I think like I'm one of those people who believe that the majority of onboarding is going to be layer 2, and it's going to be rare for people to hit layer 1. Yeah.
Why do you believe this?
There is a level of an expectation of what products can do. There's no doubt that when we release things, our product is not judged in the realm of the world of Bitcoin. It's judged in the world of as it is with everything else and every other available option, with all of their trade-offs and all of our trade-offs. It's judged in that greater sphere. And Lightning is the only chance that we can have a user experience that even comes close to what can be offered with cheaper options that sacrifice a lot more, but in the moment may make it seem like a good trade-off, even though you're sacrificing more than you know. Lightning is the only way it's going to get to a user experience that is going to be expected by a bunch of people. Now, we'll see if the use case, if Bitcoin just becomes a safe haven for, rogue states, then maybe we don't need to care about Lightning too much.
I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, rogue states will definitely use Bitcoin, but I think others will too.
I think
I know I certainly want to use it.
We know for a fact people want to use it. Just adding fiat alone has grown our Lightning transactions from people moving to Lightning, to just raising the awareness. People are saying, oh, what is the very fact that we are offering in our app a way for you to use it, and just having, it's like the Cash App effect. Millions of people are using Cash App, and there's just this Bitcoin symbol ever present in front of you.
Boss.
It's not only that, in their metadata it talks about Bitcoin on the App Store, and it's one of those things that is just it's the next level Bitcoin sign guy. It's
shout out BSG.
Shout out BSG. Just had a great couple days with him out in Berlin at the Lightning conference. And it's one of those things that is starts to raise awareness and starts to even put it as a potential option in front of people that would have never thought about it or even looked at it before. And so that's kind of what Fold is trying to do. We want to see ourselves as not just a Bitcoin company, but just a straight up consumer retail spending option that is going to just pump Bitcoin into your life in ways that are unexpected.
Yeah. And with Lightning in particular, I've been, I don't want to say apprehensive, but more skeptical. I've been a little apprehensive and a little skeptical, or I was at least, just because it's like, all right, this is brand new. It's like a huge endeavor, and you don't know. You're literally holding your breath until you see people adopting it and using it. And I think I'm becoming less and less apprehensive and skeptical, particularly more recently, because you see dev tooling come out. So you saw like Jamal James, who did the Lightning residency at Chain Code over the summer, create Polar, which is a tool that devs can use to create reg test Lightning setups. So it seems, from an outsider's perspective, outsider to the developer community's perspective, looking in, it seems that developers in particular are interested in using this to build and are actually building tools to make it easier to build on, which is a good sign, and it's what you want to see. Yeah,
that's so important. And you know what, to be honest, like, it's going to be layer 2. Our bet is Lightning, and Lightning is what we have now, and it's working and progressing the exact beyond our expectations. But it may be something else in the future. It very well could be, and we're here to follow that trail wherever it goes, in service of building upon the base protocol and increasing adoption. Like, we're there on that path. But with Lightning, it's funny to see right now, people are even saying, okay, you have a bunch of devs on the payments use case of Lightning. I'm going to make a Lightning messaging app. And you start to see this. It's like, that's also a good sign. When it starts to diversify on top of the protocol, the various different uses, and it's people are finding opportunity beyond what its maybe core use was promoted as, and starting to see all these varied different things that it could also be.
Yeah. No, what's that? Shout out, what's that? Like, it would be crazy if you could build like an Alipay or a WeChat that's completely distributed, and you own your own data, and you have a quasi passport and your Lightning node. And
It's the dream, and I don't think it's that far off. I mean, it is.
Well, do you think it's imperative?
I think it's imperative. I think if you're in this space and you are not building for those use cases, I think you're missing the point of what we're here for.
Well, I think this is an interesting segue into how you got into this and your story about hearing Bitcoin at a town hall meeting, or
Yeah, this was so I look back and I had basically like 3 seminal moments with Bitcoin before I ever even really dove down the rabbit hole. And one of those, so Marty mentioned, I grew up in Northern California, wine country, and one of the things I was working on was services for migrant workers coming through. You know, it's kind of a shadow population that comes through, several thousand each year. They come and go, and so really there's no infrastructure built. And so the idea was, okay, how do we support this population that essentially supports the prosperity of this town year long, and they're only here for a couple weeks. And so we brought housing, legal representation, medical, and one guy was coming out there and saying, giving workshops on alternatives for remittances to send money back home. And the reason why is because a lot of these guys would either take a 15 to 20% hit sending remittances back home, you know, on a Western Union or whatever. But also some of them would bring it with them, which would cause personal danger and harm with them as they follow the harvest going up the western seaboard. And so this was brought very early on. I can't even remember the exact wallet that he was even promoting at the time because it was so primitive.
who was promoting it?
It was a guy from UC Berkeley, I believe, and he just came out there. The whole thing was that this was citizens coming together to provide services and connect them. So it was like, are you a lawyer? Okay, great, come help out. Are you a doctor? Okay, you can give a on the spot clinic. You know, you have land. Okay, we can put some temporary housing on there for every year, and that was kind of just one. You know, it was something that passed my mind. There was a lot of problems, and so this was like one really interesting one that didn't strike me at the moment that I would be lead me to here in this day, but it was an early one. But I think 2 others. I had one. I was living in Argentina, and the house I was in they had a big family party, and one of the cousins was there, and he was a big security researcher developer down there, and he was telling me all about this thing called Bitcoin. And he was saying how he was, it's the future, it's money, and his family was laughing him off and everything. And Argentina went through a couple defaults since then. The guy used it legitimately as a safe haven asset and came out on not only on top, but very good.
Stronger.
But like Citadel in Argentina.
Boss.
And was able to completely demonstrate the narrative, an incredible use case of what it could be, of exiting an economy in turmoil at a time.
Told you fuckers, as soon as they printed those 100-year bonds, I was out of here.
So it's like these use cases are just hitting me, these like very pure demonstrations of what it could be are just like hitting me directly in the face. And a later one was Occupy Wall Street. I was involved in that in Oakland for a little bit, and we were taking donations and paying out vendors with Bitcoin. And it wasn't a lot of Bitcoin coming through, but this was one of the first times that anyone saw Bitcoin signs and QR codes and onboarding people who had no idea what it was to just custody it, and how would that work with a bunch of people who needed access to it to pay out different people. And again, censorship resistant payments. So like these like beautiful kernels of what this technology could be, and that would ultimately go through all these different narrative changes. But it was just one of those things that was just so very clear, and provided like in aggregate, like, oh damn, this is something I need to pay attention to.
And how did you end up like, all right, Fold is the way that I'm going to pay attention to it? Like what?
Good question.
Like
my background is, I've entrepreneur building companies primarily in payments, consumer and retail. And in one of those gigs, I was working alongside on a project for Google with Matt Luongo, who is founder of Fold, and now works is, lead of Thesis, founder of Thesis, doing a lot of crazy work over there too. And we were just working together, and we were sharing ideas, and it just was a fit. It was one of those times when on-chain Bitcoin just wasn't seeming like it was going to actually happen, and we knew layer 2 was coming. And once we saw the inklings of that, we're like, let's kick this, let's get this thing going. Now is the time to start this thing again. This use case again is here, and we have a good shot at it. So we partnered up and got to work.
Was this like, were you at a point in your life where like, all right, I need to give up what I'm working on now, and I want to focus on Bitcoin?
This was the most exciting, important thing I could think of working on. Before that, working on, what other people consider as super exciting things, like autonomous, and like all of like, in hindsight, this is by far the most important thing that I could consider myself working on right now. Where this experiment goes, who knows? But I would absolutely not trade it for any other life path that had presented itself to me.
No, I feel very strongly the same way. But interesting that you said that you guys saw that layer 2 was coming and that you decided to hop on that opportunity, because I was having a conversation last night at a bar here in Brooklyn with a fellow freak. And I've been thinking about this for a while. Like, do you think there's like an order of operations through which these networks can become successful?
Yes.
Is there like a PEMDAS for a successful distributed peer-to-peer peer-to-peer digital cash system?
I honestly have never heard the PEMDAS analogy, and it's perfect.
Right?
It's perfect.
I've been thinking about this for a bit. I'm thinking about writing something long form about it. Like, is there a PEMDAS for this stuff?
I think we have been experiencing the PEMDAS in real time and excruciatingly painful. We were going like demos for a while, and then we restructured. Some people went on the fork of Podemos, and they're doing their thing now. I'm not sure what's happening with them, but like, it is 100% by trial and error figuring out how to build a system from the ground up again. And it seems that there is an order of operations that you can only unlock. You can see the next level. Like, it's not like everyone couldn't see, instant payments would be incredible, censorship resistant payments around the world. Everyone could see that was great. Some people leapfrogged just to go right to that, tried to go right to that. We know how, we know what's happening with all of that. And so, it's not about being able to see it, but you literally have to live through it and build it. It's like how blocks are formed. The sediment just needs to build at a certain point where the next layer can be viable at a certain point, even if you can articulate it in the present.
Yeah, it's like an expanding universe revealing itself.
Yeah.
No, but I do want to expand on that PEMDA. Like, I think that's where I think a lot of the confusion in the altcoin world is they don't understand the order of operations that may exist for these systems to be sufficiently and distributed, right?
I think Bitcoin community needs this. I think perhaps the rest of the crypto world needs that even more, that perspective, because I think that's a fundamental. I've never heard that way of putting it. I think it's awesome. I would love to see a paper on that.
All right. I only ever
get to work.
All right. Maybe there'll be a bent tomorrow. I'll write about it. No, let's brainstorm on that. Because it is, I think, for creating mental models of this stuff, I think. I don't know, it just seems natural. Again, like Szabo talks about the progression from collectible to store value, medium of exchange, unit of account. You can extrapolate that to you can only have a DeFi-enabled future if the base layer is sufficiently distributed to such a point where your average Joe can download a full node and verify his transactions.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the history of currency that he laid out and others have in the past. It's about creating you can't skip the steps, right? You have to go through the steps. It had to be at the beginning that Bitcoin was this weird ass collectible trading card being traded on a a Mount Gox style thing that's used to be trading cards and things like that. Like it had to go through a collectible phase and evolve. And now,
right now, go back to the UTXO consolidation. Like that's what I wrote about today. Like we're 11 years in, and the quote unquote people with asymmetric information, as opposed to people outside the Bitcoin and cryptocurrency bubble, still don't have their shit together. They don't know how to consolidate UTXOs and interact economically with the blockchain. Like they're still figuring it out.
I mean, and it's weird that it's like all that we're building essentially is a technology to facilitate that narrative transition, and it will change as it goes. Like the only thing that was needed at the beginning was essentially what came out, and it was widely available at the Genesis block. And in order for as the narrative changed, the technology had to change with it, but you couldn't jumpstart the narrative of it and just bring that technology into the present. Like it has to go through these periods.
Yeah, it has to have growing pains. You can't have it all. Like it's not going to be a completely saturated, fully liquid,
but
stable currency out of the box.
Here's where we might, the Silicon Valley mindset of just, oh, we can build that right now.
Oh,
we got it, and it will happen tomorrow. And we'll raise a bunch of money and it'll be real. And then we realize like we work 10 years later, like, oh, wasn't real.
Oh, what?
Whoops.
Having worked at a WeWork here in New York City, it was obvious. Like WeWork itself was a VC-funded unicorn that was probably bloated. And then at the time I was working for a software company that was a great company, but not going to be like unicorn status or anything. But like looking around at the other companies on our floor, it was like, they were like Groupon knockoffs, and Groupon was already a VC-funded asshole company. And the WeWork saga was personified in the companies that roamed its floors, at least in the office that I was in. Maybe I got a bad crop of companies at the Fifth Ave WeWork here in New York City. But
I think the history is going to be defined by there actually was only a couple good ones, and free money everywhere, easy money allowed a lot of ideas that maybe shouldn't have existed to flourish for a while. And I think history is going to be pretty brutal on a lot of this stuff.
Yeah. So what's made you this way? You were traveling with your dad in Asia, selling wine growing up. You were at these meetings trying to figure out how to help migrant workers. What drives your passion for this technology in particular, like from your past? Like it seems like you're a good dude who just wants to get back to his community.
I think that's what I like. We've known each other for a little bit, Marty. This has been a long time in the making, but I buy into your reading right there. I think a lot of it is that Bitcoin provides brings a level of truth to interactions in life that is obfuscated in just about every other, what we consider technology or where the future is and things. It's a lot of that is just like smoke and mirrors, and you can feel it. And especially working in Silicon Valley, you see it. You don't just feel it, you see it. And so when a technology comes along that just cuts right to the core of it and presents this extremely transparent way of going about life and relating to people that can be audited by anybody and freely engaged with anybody else, like the smoke and mirrors, like in fact there is no smoke. Like it's what's such an incredible counterpoint to crypto overall, is like there is a very clear smoke and mirrors, and then this kernel of brutal honesty in the center, which I consider that's the Bitcoin world.
Yeah. So what did you see in Silicon Valley? What was your experience like? Did you see the monotonous rot of feeding the machine, or again, not to ask a leading question?
I would say it becomes abundantly clear. You spend a couple years living in San Francisco, and a city that I grew up absolutely in awe of its beauty, its history. I was, before this stuff, I was a rhetoric history major studying like how societies transform themselves by like moving to new frontiers and things like that. And San Francisco is a pretty crazy use case of that. And you get there and you start to see it, and there's definitely a sense that things have gone awry, or there's some specter that is fueling this in just these odd ways. And so you start to see that very quickly. You start to see that affect the people there, the discourse, the conversations, the friends. And it for someone, I grew up in the Bay Area. I got to see it for a long time. I grew up in a small town up there that just barely has a stoplight really. And then getting to come into the Bay Area and see that and know the history, and it becomes something that reveals itself. Like you can feel it in the place. And like there's something like about New York, what I love so much is it's very hard to change this spot. It has changed a lot, but it seems endless. Like forces like that happened in San Francisco can take it over in a matter of years, because it's small. It is essentially a small village. And so, like forces like a gold rush or a tech boom can just absolutely change it without, in a matter of a decade. It takes things longer here and things change. So I admire this about this, even though how many people I come here say how much it's changed. Like there's a certain immovability that you feel when you're here, that just doesn't happen, necessarily in, back home where I'm from, or what I've seen happen. So I don't know how that has affected me or how it came to inform it, but it's certainly the reality that I've witnessed out there.
Yeah, no, it's crazy as an outsider looking in. San Francisco these days in particular gets a lot of shit, and it's like
there's a weird sense that when you fly into San Francisco and you look down, you feel like I can change that place. Like I can, like it is, like I can see it all out of the window of my, airplane, and it's small. It's beautiful. It's there. I can live a good life. I feel I can change that place. You look at New York out there. I was just walking down, out of and I had a shot somewhere in Williamsburg and looked out to the skyline of Manhattan out there, and you just feel completely.
It's the concrete jungle, baby.
You feel inundated. You're like, I'm not, I'm just going to be living my life here. It's going to affect me. I'm going to have a good life and try to do it. And, I know there are certainly forces here that are not for the positive, but they don't seem as pervasive as what can happen and kind of monoculturally can happen in a place like San Francisco.
Yeah. I want to bring back the San Francisco from film noir.
Oh yeah, my favorite.
That's very nostalgic. I took American literature classes in college for a few of my electives. Dove into a lot of film noir, especially in the film classes, obviously.
That's a wonderful period of San Francisco. There's so many good ones. I mean,
right.
Part of what I studied there was the growth of San Francisco, how that changed, how it changed from this essentially little village on the edge of the Pacific that was inhabited by, at one point, 10 nations, all saying they laid claim to it, to what it is today.
I never knew that.
Yeah, and part of it was a very, very powerful technology called the goddamn railroad that was essentially used to change the narrative of who owned that, of who controlled culture. And at the end of that railroad, they created universities to indoctrinate that idea of who's, that they would say that this railroad is an unbroken line between here and ancient Greece directly to San Francisco that will take that thread of history, when most people there were from Russia, China, indigenous populations, Mexico, who had nothing to care about this unbroken line from Greece, who are all nation building and world building in their own way. But this technology gave them an unprecedented power to lay claim to that was able to be extremely successful.
Yeah. That's why it's such a shame to see the state today, the state of San Francisco today, because it's got such a rich history.
It'll come back.
This great melting pot. But I saw a woman tweet. Somebody tweeted out a picture of their Tesla being broken into, and the tweet was, "Hey, this is the fourth time this has happened in a month. Let's figure this out, San Francisco." And somebody quote tweeted it and was like, "Maybe you shouldn't be flaunting your richness in front of everybody." I was like, "What the fuck?" Like, you can't expect common decency of your fellow man not to break into your car. Like that's
that is called a San Francisco, welcome, right? That's how we welcome you.
Oh, it's happened to me before.
Yeah,
my first trip to Sonoma to Healdsburg, like 5 or 6 years ago.
Yep.
We're actually on our way back. It was Martin Luther King weekend, and it was Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and we were in Golden Gate Park. It was, again, a holiday. There were thousands of people. We had our car parked in Golden Gate alongside like hundreds of other cars. We're dumb Philadelphians, had no idea of what was going on. We go walk into the Japanese garden, walk through that.
Beautiful spot, yeah.
Beautiful spot. It's the background of my phone still.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we got our shit ganked.
Yep.
Window broke, took all of our bags. I mean, we were dumb. We had all of our bags in there, but it happened.
That was, I lived in the Tenderloin of San Francisco, which I don't know if you know, that's like...
Yeah, I've been there before.
Yeah. So some people come to visit. I was living there for a while. And that was... And the funny thing about San Francisco, if anything, if the tourism board of San Francisco could change one thing, it would be to not make all of the hotels essentially in the Tenderloin, so that you're basically having all these visitors come through, and that's what they see.
Well, this year when we went to Sonoma before Bitcoin 2019, we stayed in the Tenderloin, and it was my wife's first visit to San Francisco, and she was not happy. We got out of our cab, and there was literally some dude masturbating right outside the hotel.
That's I had neighbors and outside neighbors that would that would be common, but let's vote for a couple more hotels more equally distributed throughout the city to give a...
Why don't they want to build more? Like, that's the problem, right?
Would you... So here, that's a good question. So you can... It's a weird thing, right? A lot of people not liken, but there are some similarities between building real estate and block size, right? And there are arguments like, okay, why would I want to increase my... why would I want to allow someone else to increase the utility of my area around me if I live in such a scarce asset? Why would I want to allow that if that's going to depress any kind of price and chance of my home going up? The more scarce my land is, the more it's going to go. Number is going to go up. And so the scarcity thing is
bitches don't understand marginal utility.
There you go.
Let's go.
100%. So we need to bring these things that we have learned into the space, into San Francisco politics. But it may be too far gone anyway for that. But
yeah, they just elected some zealot, right?
For
DA?
So this was the guy who came from his parents were Weather Underground.
Murdered some...
Yeah, I think they were behind one of the bombings. Yes. Yeah. I don't know, unfortunately, because I actually lived in San Francisco for a couple of years. I find my home, and I call where I live in the Bay is Oakland, which is a whole different world.
Congrats. Good for you.
Yes. So I was a transitory figure in San Francisco, but yes, I think that did just happen. I don't know his politics too much, but I've definitely heard some things.
Yeah. This guy's apparently been groomed by some left-wing extremists.
Yeah. And
it's not my city, though. It's not my city.
Not my city either, except they won't stop calling me to vote on these ballots. So maybe I should answer these and say, okay, give me a ballot, I'll vote.
Well, that was another thing. Apparently, like, the voter turnout was pretty abysmal for this shit, too.
Yeah, and, the way, it's stack rank and things like that. So that we talk about governance and how governance is supposed to work. And, like, the technology of governance produces the governing body, like how people vote and the rules around who is elected produce the certain people who get into these offices.
And create the incentive system through which people try to exploit. Right?
Exactly. And so we're seeing these in real time, an experiment there in a place that historically has had, pretty much no balance of another. There's no other party in San Francisco, right? There's just left leaning and like left extreme. And so we get to see what happens there, really.
Yeah. As a lifelong Californian, do you think California breaks up, secedes?
It was interesting when
a lot of talk.
Draper submitted that proposal for it. He says to this day that it would have passed for sure. But I know like up closer to where I live, there's the whole Jefferson State movement, and that's like
What's that?
It's a movement to break up California, basically everywhere, Sacramento and north essentially, and southern Oregon and a little of Idaho, I believe, or something like that, would break off into its own state because the interests are so misaligned with the rest of California, and the power bases just basically mean they're unrepresented up there.
Yeah, they're beholden to L.A. and San
LA and
Francisco.
San Francisco, yeah. And so you see this, you'll be driving up to 101, you pass, Sonoma County, and then basically after that is when you start to get into, you have entered Jefferson State, the state of Jefferson. You'll see the propaganda everywhere. It's one of those things that goes in and out of being, a serious movement to just the relics of the propaganda are there, but then it constantly is coming in and out and being a thing. And so I think in general, if it's not going to happen, then California will have had to have found a way to govern more locally, which is hard to imagine that outcome happening at the moment.
It seems like you were trying to get involved with that.
Well, that's yeah. There's plenty of people doing that.
Well, it's also crazy. Most people, especially us dumb Americans, don't realize that California is bigger than like Canada,
Yeah.
and a bunch of other countries. Like people don't realize how fucking big California is.
Exactly, and you definitely feel that. Like that's what I'm kind of talking about. Like you can feel like you can change. You feel like you could change San Francisco, but coming to New York, you feel like you're gonna be the ones who's gonna be more changed. You look at California as a whole, and you're like, oh my God, how that almost seems out of reach as well. And so I do think there has to be a shakeup. There has to be something because interests are increasingly being misaligned. Focus is being paid to a smaller aggregate of people. And like you just see it in all different styles. That's why like the water situation in California is so terrible. Like, and all of these pieces of California politics show this what happens when it becomes misaligned with the general electorate.
Well, is California just a little microcosm of what's going on in the world right now? We got Hong Kong, Chile, Bolivia, Venezuela, Lebanon, Iran, Iraq. There's people are pissed off right now, man.
People are a little hot-tempered and showing it. I agree. But I would say so. People are saying like, oh, right now is different. But I would like it has been like this for a good decade, and countries have been changing the
whole Syria debacle.
Yeah, there's like this is not a new thing as in the last year or two. This is a musical chairs of rebellion happening.
But do you agree that the music's coming to a bit of a crescendo right now?
It is. Well, I think it's coming to a crescendo because it's hitting centers of power that have historically not been hit. Like the Hong Kong China thing is absolutely a moment where
the world's watching.
And not only that is that it is at an unprecedented power who's already demonstrated that they don't necessarily deal with problems in the way that other countries do.
They do not give a fuck.
Yeah, and so I think we'll see how that ends up. I wish health and safety to those doing good work out there, but I agree it's only ramping up.
Yeah, no, I wish health and safety to those as well, but I am very worried for your health and safety.
Yeah. I don't mean to even do the thoughts and prayers kind of thing. Yeah. No, so that's why you start to see taking this back to Bitcoin, like people setting up. I think it was Matt starting to like send out sats over to creating campaigns to send sats back to the Hong Kong protesters, and like there are certain moments where this can be demonstrated. The Hong Kong protesters, HSBC was canceling bank accounts for them.
Yep.
And so
love their Mexican drug lords, but if you're trying to protest the the Communist Party of China, you're fucked.
And we see, like I was driving, I was back to my trip in Thailand. I was going down the Mekong Delta, Mekong River, and they were pointing out, hey, look at this amazing bridge that's being built. It's going to railway directly from Beijing to Bangkok. And they're like, the Chinese are building it. And they're like, oh, okay, that, connecting the region. Okay, cool. And they say, well, actually not cool. They come in and they bribe officials to essentially approve plans for incredibly large infrastructure projects. And they have terms where if you don't pay this back in a certain amount of time, this is effectively our sovereign zone.
Oh, China's doing this.
Yes.
So they're doing this in Africa as well.
And they just and they didn't seize, but this is
What's
in
it
real time
called?
happening in Kenya at the largest port in Kenya, I believe.
Yeah. Alex Gladstein's all over this.
Yes. And so this is
like a $4 trillion initiative or something like
so
that.
this is directly out of the playbook, and it is honestly genius playbook. It's like if
you've ever read Life of an Economic Hitman, that's what you do. You make them dependent.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think if there's any time for a counterbalance of, this idea of massive credit and massive expenditures of money that can dwarf any logical agreements or can easily take over the, basically bribe of your governing bodies that are so overwhelming in the terms of how much money is on the table, that there's a counterbalance in power that is almost that is unbelievable and that has almost an inevitable outcome. And so you start to see how a counterbalance of a different type of money to sovereign money for this to happen is more important than ever. Now, will that be Bitcoin? I don't know. I hope it will, but like there needs to be like at a base layer of the currency needs to be something to fight against this, because at the end of the day, the money creation is happening at only a few locuses around the world, and that gives incredible leverage against everybody.
It gives the most amount of leverage that anybody can have against anybody else, right? Because that is the most important tool, is money. It is there to communicate value transfer between disparate goods. And now it is why I'm very optimistic, because it does feel like it can't get that much worse. Like it's literally you have to be optimistic, because you just literally end up in 1984 full on Chinese surveillance state exported to the rest of the world, and that just doesn't seem tenable. Like
Doesn't seem good.
Doesn't seem tenable, but then you have like 1.5 billion people in China living under this regime.
Yeah, and a lot, even it's not like
or 2 billion. How many people?
They're also living under this too, and it's like it's not that this is being exported by the people of
it's
place.
The corporations.
It's the corporations, and these are technologies that are allowing this to happen. This is ideas of how money works and how money can be deployed, and taking advantage of economic climates in other countries that provide, on the surface, great benefits, but come with incredible drawbacks that just can't be known in the moment.
Yeah, and that's what's actually interesting to see on the world stage right now is the battle for 5G, and that's the battle for 5G, the battle for cooperating on 5G or going our separate routes, right? And I think I saw something today where it looks like China and the U.S. are dead set on just going their separate ways in this 5G world, and so you could have a bifurcation of the digital world happening here if
you look at
5G is not turning us all into drones or whatever, giving us all cancer. But if it is,
if we survive the cancer, then
yes, we get over that, and it is a technology worth pursuing. It seems that we might bifurcate into two worlds here.
It seems like, the Silk Road Initiative, or I believe that's what it's called that they have. Yeah, the Silk Road Initiative they have, I think that's already been presented. There's 2 world operating systems right now that are being offered, and they're definitely not both wholesome and great for the rest of the world. Like, absolutely, and that's not what I'm saying. But this is almost a point where, interoperability was fine while we're all figuring it out. We're stealing each other's technologies, figuring it out. But now we figured out how to create these walled gardens that are extremely, extremely powerful and can operate at the state level and be exported exponentially. The U.S. has been doing it for a long time, and China has just developed its own special blend of what that is. That seems particularly powerful, and in contrast to what we've seen.
Yeah. And it seems like just recently, in the last 6 months in particular, you have people starting to question, like, why do we have UI here giving us our surveillance technology? And I think that was an article in the New York Times about the subway system here in New York. They're considering experimenting with HUI's facial recognition technology.
But it's cheaper, Marty.
It's cheaper? So fucked, though. We're all face fucked. We're face fucked. We are. And that's, it's weird. It's unfortunate. It's like, there's nothing we can do there. We are erecting these systems that, again, can just flip a switch one day, and it can be, we're catching people that are jumping the fare. And then the next day it's like, this dude said something on Twitter 30 minutes ago. We saw that he was at the Montrose stop, so we're going to pick him up at 14th Street in Union Square because we don't like what he said.
Yeah.
Like, that will be possible.
I think that's why, like, when you look at a world where things seem so abstracted away from you, but you see the consequences, you see where it's going, and you seem almost like looking at New York, you seem powerless for stopping where it's going. That's why, like, you ask, why, how do you find yourself working on the stuff you do? That's 100% part of it, is looking, okay, I'm going to contribute time and energy and mental focus to a technology that could potentially change the balance in some way. And again, this is all an experiment. And so if imagine this world that you see today and this experiment wasn't being run.
Which experiment? The surveillance state or Bitcoin?
Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Imagine if this movement was not.
I can't imagine it.
It would just be scary.
I've been thinking about this too long. I can't imagine it. Please don't take Bitcoin from me. Please. But with that being said, like, do you see people? Again, we were talking earlier about apathy and stuff like that. But like, is it too far gone? Like,
I don't think it's ever too far gone. Or else, once you, like, if you're building stuff and you're like putting effort, once you believe that, it's like, why wake up and do it? And so,
that's actually not the question I wanted to ask.
Okay, good.
You're saying it's an experiment. When is it not an experiment?
When is it not an experiment? Yeah.
Is like some people.
When does the experiment become the reality?
Yes, that, and some people would argue Bitcoin's not an experiment. It's working as is.
It is
today.
I completely agree, but I think it is. I still think that to not view it as an experiment and something that needs to continue being worked on is the wrong way to go, and that's why I think,
it's naive, definitely.
This idea of ossification and all this stuff is a little naive right now. I think
I don't want ossification right now. I just want ossification in people's minds to be like, hey, this should be our goal that we should get to.
And so here this brings me to, okay, I'm going to talk about Fold right now. A part of the like Trojan horse aspect of Fold is to, again, I said earlier, is to distribute as much Bitcoin to as many people as possible in the shortest amount of time. The idea of that is both to get people to get exposure to asset and start to learn about it, but it's also about building an electorate of people that have its ideals and vote for its ideals, or exert political power in favor of that. And without things that teach people that, people don't know necessarily how to act. And so I think giving someone something and teaching them and them learning to value it over time will be something that people defend. And I think that's when you change apathy away from just like, I don't know how to fix it, to like, okay, here's one small thing I can do.
Yeah. And it's like, hey, I've learned so much about this and know how it's impacted my life that it is imperative that we all learn.
And again, like what we just said. Okay, imagine your life right now with everything that's going on in the world, and this experiment that you and I have been working on for a while doesn't exist. Like, Satoshi never happened.
What would
Genesis block never happened, but the world is still working the way it is.
we'd be focused on like SOFR rates and stuff like that. Like not even like that's the type of innovation we'd be thinking
Yeah.
about. Not even.
And so it's imperative for us when we build things to not just slap it on it, but just cultivate this idea, the ideals that are brought from it, both the stuff given to us from the cypherpunks early on, but also now as a global technology that offers an alternative to what we have. And if you're not doing that and you're also working in the space, then I think you could be more effective.
How can we best work to not come off as a cult?
That's a good question. Does it need to be a cult
Yeah,
to succeed?
Like how cultish should we be? Is there like there's a scale for everything here?
So maybe it's maybe it's just onboarding enough people that like are kind of on the fringes that it's hard to see the center of the cult.
Is it it's like, do we just need people who are willing to take like 2 ass slaps? Like that's it. Like, and if that's the intensity of the cult that we should be striving for.
Like someone said, someone I don't remember who it was, but someone was like, MMT or fiat is the religion, Bitcoin is a cult. I was trying to like, what does that mean? And the way I interpret it is just the cult is a precursor to a religion, right?
Interesting.
Like they all start that way. And if you look at how those things form, like again, talking about PEMDAS, like maybe the cult is the P.
Part of the order of the operations.
Yeah.
Is it a cult? I'm trying to think about like religious inceptions. What is the oldest religion?
The oldest religion.
Zoroastrian exploration.
Zoroastrian.
I'm trying to think. So
Let's
that's
see,
sort of like pre-Sumerian,
Yeah.
and that was very mystical religion.
I'm trying to go back to my
And you go
Houston
to,
Religions of the World book that I read.
You go to Gilgamesh, Indian religions, and I'm trying to think of how they start.
But here's one thing that was interesting. Again, going back to my travels in Asia was, Buddhism was started in India.
Zoroastrian astrology, not exploration. I'm sorry.
Practicing could be called the exploration aspect of the astrology.
Yes. Thank you for saving me there.
But like you go back to in Thailand, Buddhism is the dominant religion. In Asia, it's also massive, but it's all started in India. And it's in India you see a lot of Muslim and a lot of Hindu, and so you start to see how places where they begin can start to emanate elsewhere around the world via memes, because you start to see in Thailand their whole thing is every day of the week has a different Buddha. One Buddha is happy, and one Buddha has a hand that's like stopping you from being bad. One is like giving something to you. And these are replicated across all of Asia.
Are you supposed to exude these values on these days?
Some people are associated with them. I tried to pay attention and learn as much as I could. So there are much people better who could represent them. But you start to look, and these same images are replicated in other countries across, Southeast Asia, Japan and China, but the Buddha just looks maybe different. Maybe it's a little bit more plump versus Thailand. It's much more, it's a thinner Buddha.
Some are more feminine, some more masculine.
Yes, and these are all just memes that go into their culture, solidify in them to like bring what ultimately started in India. And that even in India is not as big of a thing as it.
It's like anime.
Yeah, it suggests. Yeah. And so like, I think here at the Bent, the origination of stacking sats, all of these things, this is the work that is needed to be done.
I cannot take credit for that. It's all Matthew. It was not me.
Well, this happens at the Citadel we call TFTC.
I'm anti-Citadel. I do not want a future of Citadels. The future of Citadel seems despotic to me.
The freak Citadel. It does. I agree with that. I'm not pro Citadel in that way.
I want a future where I could just live in Northern California and live on a vineyard and make dope wine, have people come on my vineyard and talk about wine. Let's talk about wine.
I love that.
Do you love wine?
I love wine.
I do as well.
I don't know. So we had this idea that I was doing before was a wine club based on insurgent wineries around the world. And so you have, in Lebanon, you have wineries and that are in Palestine too, that are in between the actual essentially DMZ zones that are just, the main work is just taking up shells. Like that's part of harvest is like removing like military shells and things like that. You have in France, in the Languedoc region, these guys are blowing up American and Chilean and Australian wine that is being imported into France and diluting the French wine mystique. So they're going to villages and like blowing up wine containers and it's just flowing down like old medieval French villages.
Talk about petty.
Yeah.
Or pettiness, excuse me, pettiness.
Yeah, you have wineries in south of the border of Mexico in the valley, in the Guadalupe Valley right there, that are related to Zapata and the kind of movements across the border. Wine is something that had been tamed so much that I wish that we need more memes and narrative to bring it back to its roots of not only just like a base of civilization, but like pretty badass.
Right. Well, that's why I like the California wine scene in particular, right? Because they blew up on the scene in the 70s. What was it? Ridge went to the French tasting and won.
Yeah, they went there. They had also the French tasting in California, Chateau Montelena, that one. Yes, and I agree, that's true. Now, you go look at Napa, and it looks like Disneyland, French Disneyland.
Robert Mondavi.
Yeah, it just looks strange. It looks strange. So that's why I'm proud Sonoma on the other side, a little bit more down to earth. But that's changing too. Like speaking of just massive consolidation, wineries that were run by family friends and families just scooped up by massive distributors that own.
Yeah, Copain just bought a.
Well, and that's a relatively innocuous version of this. There's, the massive distributors. I won't name them, but that could come in there and just pluck up any old winery they want, change the soul of it, which changes the town and the area around it.
Well, this is a good microcosm of America right now, right? Like,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
How do you preserve Sonoma's essence without it being bastardized? And it's the same thing for like a Bitcoin maximalist who's trying to like run a non-custodial. Like, how do you? How do you?
Always got to bring it back. We'll bring it back.
Right, but like, how do you stay authentic? How do you?
So I think
keep authenticity.
I think it's natural progression. Is just what time of the era do you live in? And we're seeing this now. One of the coolest things that's happening now is, like right now, to spin up a new winery costs millions of dollars, and like if you're planting, it's at least 3 years before you're going to see any fruit. At least 3 years, probably 5 years, and then you have to wait, put the wine down, so that's another like 24 months or whatever. And so you're talking about millions of dollars outlay in capital to only be able to like harvest years later. So like for most people that have really badass cool ideas of what to do with wine, it's completely outside of their ability. And so what you're seeing in the wine industry right now, the coolest stuff is people going around and sourcing amazing grapes, bringing it back, doing interesting things with the interesting blends, or just no longer having this estate landed gentry model, unfortunately, because that's one of the coolest parts about it. And moving towards this, where you see the most innovation is people just finding the right grapes, the right material, bringing it back and producing really new, exciting stuff. And then the other part is just outside. There is wine grown in every state in the U.S. In India produces wine. Like, we're going to see some cool stuff, and it's not going to come from these places that have just, like, solidified into what it is.
I don't know, but, like, nobody has the microclimates that Sonoma does, right? Like,
well, good, but these grapes that people get are coming from Sonoma. It's just they don't own the land.
Okay.
And so they have more ability to experiment and, like, bring a bit more of, like, punk rock vibe back to wine growing. Like, growing up, all the people in the wineries, that I knew, and that was my first job. I was 16. I started working on the wineries until I was, 20 years old or so.
What were you doing?
I started out as a ranch hand at first, like digging dishes and clearing suckers off the vines, and then, did other things across, but that's where I started. And these people, like, the stories would be, I was working in New York. I had a liquor store that I had, and I just decided to head out west, and I just like got this amazing property, like pristine land, and I just made it work. I brought my family there, and we just like made this into a reality.
I'm so envious. It's so fucking beautiful out there.
It
like,
is.
I can't, like, living in New York City, being from Philadelphia. I will make my way back to Philadelphia soon, freaks, don't worry.
The prodigal son will return.
I can't wait for it. But, like, driving, like, the drive from San Francisco to Sonoma.
Oh, yeah.
It's one of the most scenic, especially if you take the back routes. You don't,
absolutely.
like, you cut through Napa and then go to Sonoma through that way.
Yep.
It's fucking immaculate, view-wise.
I could not agree more. That's just brings back, that's childhood there. And so it's interesting how it's changed, but also,
Well, just as, like, I hope you know, like, outsiders see that. It's like, holy shit,
yeah.
This is paradise. Like,
I mean, and that's been the truth. You know, you had, Jack London, the Call of the Wild Rider guy who's living in Oakland, and he, found his wife, and he's just like, we're done with this. And he got on like a wagon and just rode up into the hills and found Glen Ellen in Sonoma, like right up kind of where I lived, and just found this incredible piece of land, started growing, wine was one of the, the earlier, not the earliest, because it was happening with the Spaniards and stuff, but, and just was able to create his entire life of his own and separate out there. Like I can't imagine that happening anywhere in California anymore. And it's one of those stories that, that property was, then went into disrepair after he died, and his whole property, burned down. Then you have like utopian communities moving in and like flourishing for 20 years. They're hiding gold in the trees, and they
hiding
die.
Gold in the trees.
Oh yeah, like that's how they were like hiding their money. And then the next group would come and they would find this gold, and they would fund like some other part of their community there, and they were all about whatever different utopian vision this is. Like one of the properties I grew up working on has a Greek Parthenon there, and they would just like do stuff there. And so
you go preach to the Delphi, the Oracle of Delphi, or something like that.
And so it's just like this crazy, this, like, it used to represent such a freedom of experimentation where you could go out there, you would be an hour north of San Francisco, but you were, for all intents and purposes, like experimenting on the other side of the world. And that feeling is 100% not there anymore. And it's weird how the world seems so much smaller.
Well, that's what I was just about to get into. Like, is there a frontier in America? Is America a great frontier anymore? And then, was America the last great frontier? And then, let's get cosmic here. Are we going to space next? Did we get that fucking bored? We're like, fuck. We made some dope wine in Northern California. That was the last frontier.
You might be right about that. That's like, because I do not want to live on Mars.
I don't either.
I don't. I'm not getting on that space plane.
I've asked my wife. She's like, not happening.
Yeah, I don't want to go. I would be happy, like being the captain on the boat, like going down with the ship, before I would ever like be like, that's where my future is.
Yeah. I definitely want to go to space, like one of the Virgin Galactic.
The Branson vision I like. You go up, a little champagne.
Yeah.
You get a little anti-gravity, and then you pop
get a
down.
little existential like peek into your soul. Like, oh, it's bigger
you have the I forget what the effect is called. The astronauts come back with saying it blows your mind once you see the pale blue dot from afar.
Yeah. The scale of it all.
Yeah, the scale of it all.
The scale of it all. God, what would fuck? Why am I forgetting his name?
Carl Sagan.
Sagan. What would Carl Sagan think of all this shit that's going on right now?
So I remember I saw some interview with Elon Musk, and he was basically talking about he was dictating something that Carl Sagan said about the pale blue dot, and he said
pale blue dot's one of like still chills.
It's you can think about it, and Elon is like reciting it, and he then goes and says, in part of the pale blue dot it says, and this is all we have, and this is all we ever have. And Carl Sagan's point there is like we need to work to be able to make this world livable forever, because this is all we have. And Elon was like in character reading it, and then he pauses and he says, well, that's actually not true. And then he goes back in, but he was trying to like lay praise onto Sagan and do all this, but he stops to be like his Mars promotion.
Sagan didn't know that my parents were going to fuck and I was going to be born.
Yeah,
Take us to Mars.
exactly. So I mean, like, I prescribe to the Sagan world vision, like, work to make this place work.
Yeah.
For sure.
Just be nice to your fellow human. This
Yeah.
is the only thing we got. It's crazy. Like, the pale blue dot, if you freaks are listening to this and have never seen the fucking video, go watch it right now. It's the most humanizing video if you can live under the assumption that the earth is round and the universe is in a simulation.
Before you go to sleep, turn the lights off, cue up pale blue dot, and then you will float into some
Heavy space.
Some heavy space.
It's all about perspective, freaks. What are we doing here? What are we doing here? What the fuck are we doing here, Will? I don't know. I think I need some more mezcal.
You do. I mean, we can blame it on that for sure.
We're almost 2 hours in. I'm still having fun. This is oh, whoa. Heavy pour there. Sorry, honey. I'm coming up hot and horny.
I mean, that's what mezcal, one of the things they call, I forget.
Minute. Hour 55:25.
Oh my God. Okay. What else do we got? So the mezcal, the maguey, what it's made of, the plant was considered like the cosmic plant because it's one of those things that the one thing provided everything that a society of people needed. It had food, you can eat it, you can make materials out of it, baskets, rope,
Tinder.
You can make tinder, you can make mezcal, you can make absolutely anything, fire, everything with it.
The mezcal's got your boy feeling real good right now.
Yeah, and that's like, I think what happens is it shows in the mezcal.
Well, let's talk about the history of mezcal. You were describing to me before we hit record. You got a lot of warriors drunk and ready for battle.
Yeah. So let's see, where do you even start with this? So mezcal, like when you talk about the history of mezcal, you're really just talking about history because it's pretty much always been used for this. And so the interesting part is when around the Mexican-American War, a little bit before that, you have these families up in Tequila, up in Mexico. The Souza family, you may know of. The Cuervo family, you may be familiar with. Essentially all got together, and as the U.S. was building up this massive population of people, they realized there was this huge market up there. And so, in the Caribbean, people were sending rum out there because there was such a big market for people. You had, over in Europe, they were sending gin out, and in Mexico is like, well, we got tequila. This families could figure out this whole new market to market to. And so they started flooding America with tequila, especially on the frontier. And you'll go to Tequila and they'll even tell you right now that the only thing that gave the Americans the cojones to come and take the Mexican territories was because they flooded it with tequila, and they were all, essentially white boy drunk,
And the Alamo, like, fuck this.
Exactly. And so it led to this incredible success in some ways and their downfall in others, but they made so much money off of it. They were able to create regulatory capture with the Mexican government and say, we're going to pay you off this money, and what you're going to do is define the only type of alcohol that can be exported from Mexico is going to be called tequila, and it's going to have these characteristics. It's going to be from this place. It's going to look like this. It's going to be made like this, and which essentially outlawed the exportation of all other types of mezcals, tequila being one mezcal.
So this is like a quasi-champagne?
It's exactly the history of that, exactly. And this is the history of alcohol, creating these, some countries are better than others about creating these, regulatory capture like this.
But they're like memes at the end of the day.
Oh,
it's like you need tequila from tequila.
Yes.
You need
That's
champagne from champagne.
Or we have to call it sparkling wine in California if it's not from there. Exactly. And so you have all these mezcal farmers who are essentially unable to make it. But the interesting thing is that because tequila became so industrialized, the technology of producing tequila also became started to move away from its roots. And so whereas before all mezcals are normally The maguey is cut down. They cut it open. They bury it. They burn it with coals underneath. That's why you get that smoke in it. And then they'll take it out, and then they'll basically press it and then ferment it. When you have to produce on such a scale, that doesn't work. Like, that proof of work is way too intense.
Yeah.
So what they
It's
did,
a small batch operation.
Small batch operation. So what they did was like, okay, we're going to create massive factories that essentially steam the maguey en masse. And so that's why in tequila, you don't really taste the smoke on it anywhere.
The smoke in this mezcal is fucking incredible.
I like to call it the Scotch of Mexico.
It really does remind me of Scotch.
Yeah. And so tequila essentially became a bastardized version of itself because of the monopoly that the Salza and Cuervo families were able to create. And in Oaxaca, you have this tradition of small batch producers keeping the tradition alive, and there are hundreds of types of mezcal.
Good for you, Cuervo and Suerza. You created some shit brands.
Yeah.
Terrible brands. Was it worth it? Was it worth it? You're the bane of every white girl's existence. Was that what you wanted to be remembered for?
God. I mean, so like I was down there. I was down in Oaxaca maybe 10 years ago, and I was at this place called La Mezcaleria, and it's this place in Oaxaca. I don't know if it still exists, but it's this bar that's run by a bunch of a collective of mezcal producers who are basically just trying to keep the art alive. And their whole thing is to map out all of the different types of mezcals that are in existence, and keep the tradition alive against what tequila essentially did to it. And I was in there, and next to me at this bar was this couple, and they happened to be from New York, and they had this bar somewhere out in Williamsburg. I'm going to track down the name. And they were in there, and they were saying, "Oh my God, we're going to bring mezcal to the U.S. and like we're going to make this like an incredible, new hot thing."
La Superior.
And it was
that's the restaurant I think you're thinking of.
Is it? So it's okay. And I don't know what it is. Apparently, it was also attached to this place where like bands would come and record, like huge recording studios. Anyway, this is all. I'll give you the name after, but they were there to essentially come down and be like, this is a massive business opportunity. The problem was that Mexico never changed its laws of exportation on it, and so it became this huge pain in the ass. And so what happened was you have a bunch of these Mexican farm workers who are working in California at the wineries up in Sonoma and Napa, who then saw this opportunity and says, "Oh wait, we have tons of wild maguey growing all over Sonoma, all over California." And so you started this whole new movement of U.S. produced mezcal to get around these like laws around.
Like Nieto wouldn't let people.
Yeah, there's a lot that comes directly from the U.S.
Shit, man.
And now Guadalajara, and now everywhere, and even in the territory of tequila. And so we'll see. I think it's still dwarfed by tequila, just like it is a tiny fraction of total sales, but
quality over quantity.
Oh, quality! I don't drink anything.
This is high quality right here.
Yeah,
and so is the wine in Sonoma. It's like
I'm gonna send you a couple bottles.
This is turning into a wine and spirits podcast. I'm very happy about it. Obviously, it's been a wine and spirits podcast for a while, but we actually never talked about the wine and spirits. We've just imbibed them.
It's always been underneath it all. They all know it, though. All the freaks know it.
Are we pretentious for talking about this? Like, that's what actually I love about wine is it is very nuanced and it's very low time preference, right? You have to plan this stuff out. That's why I love the wine world in particular.
I do, but to the point I made earlier, wine needs to go back to being more dangerous than it currently is, because it does have this air of pretension, bullshit, snobbiness, and that's not what it comes from at all.
Well, that's why I love the California wine scene in particular, is because they are an affront to
that trend,
an affront, and a huge affront to that.
Yeah,
right?
I agree. Let's hope it stays that way.
Well, you're worried about the fires, right? That's what you're saying. How bad's that been? What's going on with the fire situation in Northern California?
It's now at a point where people are saying, I have worked my life. I've come to California and always wanted to live here and always said I will always be a Californian. So now you're starting to hear things like, if this has to happen every year, and every year I need to deal with 2 weeks of like choking smoke, how worth it is that, especially when the fires are increasingly encroaching on where I actually live? And so it's changing a mindset of this.
So let's take a step back. What is the situation? Like, what has happened in the last 5 to 10 years in particular that has changed the...
Right, because like fire didn't come out of nowhere, right?
Yeah.
It's all because of zoning and planning. In my opinion, as California continues to increase its, people try to find their own little plot of utopia, like we were talking about earlier. More and more of it is about finding all the last remaining corners of California in which you can build that. And so there's money fueling and finding and building in those areas. And so you build what maybe used to be small, rural towns that are expanding out, that start to expand into actual wilderness, that are just focused on building the services to sustain that town, but nothing about the environmental impact of the fact that that town is in the middle of a historic wildfire zone. And so you get this idea of like high time preference planning, just putting it out there because people want a place to consume and have this idea of what
Just
they
a
want.
hot spot to be.
And then it's like, oh, well, historically there's been massive wildfires here every 5 years. So what are you going to do about that?
And people find themselves just in the midst of it, and
Yeah,
it turns into a situation where everybody has to help out.
the topic that I just got out of was one of the most popular things going on right now is this tool, because everyone in California has a pool, is this fire hose that you put into your pool, and you can personally battle the fire coming around you.
Boss.
And the reason is because
This is true ingenuity.
when fires happen in the area, the water pressure goes to zero because all the fire engines are pulling from the water sources. And so, like, you as a homeowner...
That's something you don't think about.
No, and you as a homeowner be like, oh my God, the fire's right there. I'm going to turn on my hose and do something about it. It doesn't work. And so what happens is this new set of kind of tools are coming out of put it in your
You
pool.
have your water generator. It's called your pool.
The water generator is perfect. And you put it in your pool, and the funny thing is, like, the marketing pictures of this they're dropping a hose into the pool, and they're like personally battling a massive wildfire, which
like little
is
rascals like taking down their clubhouse.
Is horrible idea. But I don't condone that. You should leave, but make sure you have insurance.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly can't. I can't even pretend to know what that's like. I've never lived through a quasi-forest fire. There was one time I was in Costa Rica, and there was like forest fires near the surf resort I was staying at. But
It ruined my surf for the day.
yeah, it was fucking terrible. Goddamn, Costa Rica sucks. No, but honestly, like,
Yeah.
I don't like. I can't imagine what it's like living in an area in which you're like, oh, fire can just pop out of nowhere and fuck up my day.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely weird getting a call at like 5 a.m. hearing like, your mom and I have evacuated. We're going to this house. If you can get past the exclusion zones, please go get these photo books for us. It's like, that's a strange thing to hear from like a parent,
Yeah.
And so it's like forcing this weird dystopia on the whole thing in an area that was like once like, oh, this is where you come to just have the good life,
Well, and that comment in particular just like really highlights what your parents think of first. Like, get my memories, get my happy memories.
for sure.
Right? Like, fuck, man. It's so, how much does eucalyptus play in all this? Is that a conspiracy?
You know what? I need to dive more into this eucalyptus thing. I think I'm just not educated enough on it.
Yeah.
But I know that they're highly flammable. And the reason why people hate eucalyptus is because there's one of these trees that grow up as rapidly as possible, have the lowest tree root base, and so they inevitably just fall. And they're just these like disaster things that can spread, either, even
Spread their
without
seeds
fires
as
are
they
annoying,
fall.
but yeah, exactly. And so, I'm going to look more into this. I'll get back to you, Marty.
Yeah. Uncle Marty's.
Spewing his conspiracies again.
These aren't conspiracy theories; they're conspiracy facts. Will, all right, eucalyptus grows in the way you just described it, and is rampant throughout California. I have no idea. I'm kidding. I was genuinely curious. This has been a hell of a night, man. We didn't talk about Bitcoin for the last hour, I don't think.
I know, that's wild. And the funny thing is, we tried to pull it back at certain points. Didn't need to go there.
All right, let's bring it back to Bitcoin. Let's end it on Bitcoin. Where are we right now? We're in the middle, in my view, we're in the middle of a bear market still. I think people are sleeping at the wheel. I think Bitcoin's about to surprise a lot of people personally.
Yeah.
I don't want to lead you to agree with me or anything, but I do think right now, I can just tell you I'm getting a lot of DMs from people asking about paid groups and stuff like that.
That is a surefire sign.
Yeah. And again, the development, like things like Polar, WhatsApp, all this like what you're building, Fold app, like all this shit coming. Like it feels like individuals are more equipped than ever to use Bitcoin.
I completely agree. If you think about the bull market, like last time, and people were like, okay, what do I do? What do I need to do? What do I need to have to get involved? Like that question's no longer there. People know the avenues. You have Cash App where it's been in front of their face forever. People all know Coinbase. Like the avenues in terms of immediate on-ramps are far more understood than ever before. And someone described like the halving not as a fuel to the fire, but
gravity,
gravity.
Reduced. Yeah, who was that?
I don't know, but it was really good.
I really like that as well. Who the fuck was that?
Apologies to that. We're going to get you and shout out you in the show notes.
Give me. I'm going to find this out right now.
But
that was such a great, because that's, everybody's like, oh, the halvenings are, it might have been Phil Geiger from Unchained Capital. Might have been.
Don't miss a tribute, but could
I don't want to miss a tribute.
Yeah. So it was exactly like, I feel that is very real. The amount of services that people have, the amount of knowledge that people have is more than ever before. And so I think when that does happen, it's going to be exciting. But
this was Malik Manikian.
Right.
Awesome Bitcoiner. He's got the lion in the red circle, Avi, for those who are visual Bitcoiners. No, but it's true. It's like, it's not, the halvenings are not rocket fuel to gravity. They're just like, all right, you have to live under this condition of the physics of the system now. The system only delegates you X amount of coins per block reward until X block. Deal with it. Gravity just got a little heavier.
So but basically I'm excited to have a little lighter load, be able to jump a little higher, and honestly keep building. This winter has been incredible. Like you don't see this kind of work being done in bulls, and so to have this amount of time heads down is why we're going to see this gravity come besides just the halving, like even more because of the services that are immediately at hand to a large group of people. I think it's that.
So how can people help what you're doing, help Fold, help the adoption of Bitcoin?
Let's see. I think in general is to continue to be curious about what Bitcoin can be and what Bitcoin can do, and hodl, accumulate, stack sats, but also look to the use cases that are continuously building and that right now are stronger than ever. And so I think with Fold or any of the other stacking sat services, like just use them, give them feedback. Like our team lives and thinks about this all the time and take very seriously all the feedback we get. We make changes on the fly because of what we hear from people, and the roadmap changes directly because of what we're hearing from the community of people using it. So the more engagement we get, the better. And I think that's true of everyone building in this space. And so, Fold is going to is available for everybody now. So go check that out. But Start experimenting. Be curious about all the other builders and start using the services. Send some sats and stack some sats. And I think we're all going to be better as a result.
I do as well. Thank you for bringing the mezcal. We crushed more than half this bottle. I'm starting to slur my words. I think this is best to hit end on this recording. Where can we find you? At WLRBS?
Perfect.
At WLRBS on Twitter. Well, Reeves, fucking legend. Peace and love, freaks.